Fade in. Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Merk from KHEP Community Arts and Heritage Education Project. Once again, we are back with another art instruction video. The idea is every month we go in and we work with the Cookhouse, which is a local assisted living residence. We go in, work with the team and the residents there, put on some sort of art instruction. It's different every month. We bring in a new artist that has a different idea, a different art form, whatever they want to do. They bring that in. We work with whoever feels like joining us that day. But then after that, the artist and myself put together a video like the one you're watching. And we put this together to go out on the interwebs. We put together 20 art kits based on that session that they did. Those go to the Cookhouse. And so then 20 other residents from the Cookhouse can get those art kits, get that link to the YouTube video, and sit down and work on it by themselves at their own leisure, or, you know, hang out with some friends and do it with a group of people. Whatever. This month we have Eva Sacchetti, who is a super talented multidisciplinary artist. We've snagged her this month to do some sketching and drawing basics with you. So she's going to explore a couple of different techniques and approaches, just some exercises to kind of get your head going in the sketching game. Super excited to have her. She's very talented, very smart, and yeah, it's going to be a great time. So without further ado, let's get your art on. There we go. Where am I pointing? Right there. Boop. So shake the whole thing.
Hello, I'm Eva. I am an illustrator currently living and working outside of Thunder Bay, Ontario. I studied drawing and illustration as my major in university, and I love to draw silly little characters and strange forms and items in the world. And I'm going to be going through a couple of exercises that you can do, some drawing and sketching exercises to kind of warm you up and get you better acquainted with drawing, and also show you one fun little project you can do as just a fun drawing game to pass some time and apply those drawing skills. So if you are at the Cookhouse, you will already have these supplies in front of you, but if not, you can easily assemble these items. But what you're basically going to need and what you should have will include some kind of drawing paper, in this case a sketchbook, just full of basic sketching paper, nothing too fancy. This is just mostly for warm-up. A pencil, it doesn't have to be a specific fancy drawing pencil. 2B pencil will work just fine. This one is a sketching pencil, so it's meant specifically for this. A piece of willow charcoal or compressed charcoal will also work. In this kit, there will be willow charcoal, which is just a little bit softer and more delicate to work with. There will also be a eraser, or you will need one, and a sharpener, just because of cleanup and having to resharpen pencils. And then also included in the kit, or you might need a 11 by 17 or smaller, it doesn't have to be this large, piece of paper, tri-folded or letter folded into 3 sections for the activity we're going to do. You will also require some kind of interesting object from around you to illustrate, or it can also be a person. If you have somebody handy that's willing to sit and model for you, you can definitely do that. But for these exercises, we'll be going off of a reference item or object to kind of get ourselves going. So if you can find something around you that is a little bit more interesting than maybe a box, something like even a stack of books, a cup, something funky. I'm going to be utilizing this skull that I have because it has some nice rounded forms and interesting edges. So something along those lines. And yeah, that's basically all you need to get started. So our first exercise is a blind contour drawing. And what this is, well, let's take it back. Let's talk about contour drawing. So contour drawing basically just describes the process of utilizing line to create form. So cartoon characters, simple sketches, those are examples of these contour line drawings. Basically, it's anything that's devoid of shading or doesn't have shading in it, to be a little bit more plain. And a blind contour drawing, what do you think that means? It means, obviously, you can't see what you're doing when you're doing it. So the purpose of a blind contour drawing is to kind of get you trained on using your eyes to guide your hand. So what you want to do for this exercise is get a piece of sketch paper and a pencil, no eraser, and your goal is to look at the object you've selected for your still life in front of you, and only looking at that object, you're going to try to draw it without looking at the paper. You may choose to keep your pencil straight on the paper. It does help with aligning what you're drawing, but you can also lift your pencil up and down if that would help you. Your main goal is to just not look at the paper at all. It's going to make something that's a little bit ugly. It might not look like the object in front of you, but the goal is to kind of just seek out the essence of the form you're looking at. So it's just something you got to try to find out. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so starting with our blind contour drawing, we have our setup here. I've got my still life in front of me. I've just selected this skull to draw. Piece of blank paper, no eraser for something like this. We're just going to do it in one go. And a pencil, you'll have a pencil for the purpose of visibility. I'm going to use a marker for this. Realistically, you could do this exercise with a marker too if you had one. It really just adds to the no takes backsies level of this exercise. So yeah, so just staring at my object. My goal is to not look at the page, is to look at the object and only look at the object while I'm doing this. That's the blind part of blind contour. So I'm gonna get started just snapping on one side, like one edge of my shape and letting my eye trace it. So here we go. Head, trace the line. It's not going to look technically correct. And it's not going to be amazing. But the goal is not to aim for perfection. The goal is to just try to get as much of the shape down as possible without looking at the page. It trains your eye to just trust what your hand is going to do and communicate shapes through your hand. You could say it like that, I guess. Basically, you're just trying to teach the two to talk to each other and feel confident in what the other one's gonna do. I'm just going around and I'm doing the jaw. I'm sure I'm completely off of where the jaw is. And with something like this, you really just have to decide when you're going to call it. So I have been going around, tracing it around, kind of using the jaw here. And then that's what you end up with. So in my example, obviously it's come out a little bit more like a skull. I'm very used to drawing these. Yours might look completely different. But again, like the goal is to kind of look at what you've done and try to discern the shape out of what it is. So you might have the eyes pretty much there, and that's a pretty good starting point. Or you might have the size of the head pretty much down. You can do this over and over and over again, and every time you're going to get a little bit better at it just because it's training. Like I said, you're training your eyes and your hands to work together. So yeah, that's the blind contour. our next exercise is going to be a continuous line contour. So pulling off of what we just did, continuous line basically just means that line never ends. So for this project, you'll need the same thing: paper, pencil. This time you might choose to have an eraser, though I don't recommend it, as the goal of this is similar to blind contour drawing. You really just want to try to get the essence of the shape in front of you. But this time you can totally look at your paper, you can look at the item, whatever you need to do. The main goal is to not lift your pencil from the page. So basically just creating something as a continuous sketch, similar to like drawing a small flower, being a kid. You just want to keep that pencil on the paper. And using this technique, you kind of learn the throughing technique, or it has a few names, but basically the process of pulling your pencil through the shape to create or go over to other areas that need detailing. And it creates this kind of cool, sketchy looking form that also just teaches you a bit more about how to travel around a shape as you're trying to draw it. So we'll get into it. We'll do a quick one in the same form. And yeah, this is continuous line. So building off of what we just did before, using our hands to talk to our eyes, and more like the other way around, eyes talking to hands, telling them what to do. You want to employ a little bit of that with this technique. Again, this is a exercise where you should aim not to use your eraser, because the goal is to never remove your pencil, or in this case, I'm using a pen, from the paper. You want to try to do this in one go. You'll do a little bit of passing through as you go through the technique, but we'll just kind of jump into it. So like I said, your main goal, you can definitely look at the page this time. You can look at your still life that's still in front of you. Your goal is just to not lift your pen from the your pencil from the paper. If you want to use a pen, you can totally use a pen. Like I said last time, it just makes it harder for you to erase if you want to do it that way. But so again, same as with the blind contour, I'm picking a corner to start at, and I'm going to let my eye kind of carry me through the rest of the composition. But this time, I'm just going to let my eye also take a peek at what I'm doing. And I'm not going to lift my pen from the paper. So in doing this, you'll have to do a little bit of fanciness to get around things. So obviously if I'd just be drawing this normally, I would lift my pen to get all of the little teeth in there. But because I can't, I'm just using like a swirling technique. Or you could just pass through all the teeth. That's also very doable. This case, again, just going around all these shapes. Now, because I can't lift, I have to do a lot of backtracking, which really adds to the appeal of this technique. And it kind of makes you have to think about where is most appropriate to go back and forth between. So like this area, if I were to color in the sketch, this nose would be colored in likely with black anyways. So that's a really good area if you want to hide your contours. If you don't, going for an area that's logical, like here on my skull, there's a little line. So I'm utilizing that to kind of decide where I'm putting a line. And it doesn't have to be purposeful like that. That's just one way to do it. You can also change it up. Maybe I'll just do that now and just start cutting through places and still keeping the continuous line. You're just building it and not caring too much. And you can start to add detail in this way, go back and add caverns in the eyes, detailing on the skull, go back and add more. Yeah, you can really start to do a whole lot of extra detailing carrying your line through. But as you see, again, it ends up looking a little bit confusing, maybe not exactly like the item in front of you, but again, it's more about learning the shape and like where is most logical to create extra lines, and it really kind of adds something to a drawing. So it's just a really cool technique. Again, really easy to do. This one got quite detailed. You could definitely do a bunch of simpler, smaller ones, depending on like what you want to draw. But yeah, it's also just a really good exercise, again, to train or take the next step, communicating with eyes and hand and having the whole situation occur, and just limiting to yourself to a different technique for once. But yeah, that's continuous line drawing. Right. Now this next exercise, we're just going to do a plain contour drawing. So coming back from what we just did overcomplicating contour, we're just going into the more simple version of it, which is what you're more comfortable or more familiar with or more comfortable with, which is just drawing with lines only. You can kind of pull from the two techniques that you just learned to kind of get a better sense of how to approach this contour drawing. So, you know, you mainly want to look at the shape in front of you. You mainly want to try to keep your pencil on the paper as much as possible. And utilizing those two things, you can just go about doing it. This time you can totally erase anything that you're not loving. No need to press down hard. You can employ a bit more of a sketching technique. The goal here is just basically to create a line art version of what you are seeing in front of you and fully explore that shape utilizing contour. Yeah, so let's go ahead and do the contour drawing. And now for a simple contour drawing. In this case, you can definitely use your eraser if you want to. You'll want to have your pencil. Again, I'm using a pen for visibility, so I'm not going to erase. The goal of a contour drawing, as I mentioned, is to basically just create a line art version of the item in front of you. So the last two techniques we did kind of feed into this a little bit. We've gone over the blind contouring, so learning the shape's essence, continuous line, learning how to connect parts of a shape for quick sketching. This technique, with just a plain contour drawing, you can absolutely employ those techniques to it if you want to. You don't necessarily have to. So we're just going to get into it. Basically, this time I'm giving myself all of the abilities to look at the shape, to look at my paper, to be a bit more sketchy and less deliberate in my motions. So I'm coming in with a little bit more of a wiggled line, a little bit more of a broken line, just to kind of create more of the shape. And the way I do this is I usually work sporadically, so I'll come back to a bunch of different areas at once, can work a little bit more systematically, like sketching out the teeth. For contour, again, like the goal is to just kind of try to draw it with lines, so you don't want to focus too much on its form, which more advanced sketching might touch on, and honestly might be helpful in this case because I'm kind of goofing this shape up, but that's okay. It's practice.
So when you say form and line, what do you mean by the difference of that?
So form would be like a three-dimensional aspect of a shape, and line is just the un-three-dimensionalifying of shape, if that makes sense. Yes. So yeah, we're basically boiling it down to something simple when we're doing contour drawing, and if you're adding form to it, or 3 dimensions to it, you're adding more complexity to it. So that's where issues of like darkness in the skull's eyes start to come into question, or roundness of its cranium. But just for this, we're just trying to communicate that this is a skull to the better of most people's understanding. And like you can get most details in there. Again, you can really go away with this. You can add the dots in the eyes if you want to. Well, you're not necessarily drawing a skull, but you know what I mean. You can put those like last little finishing touches on it that really add to it and sell it. And yeah, that's basically a continuous contour drawing. Sorry, that is a basic contour drawing, but done continuously. And that's that one. Great. And now our final exercise, or warm-up, if you will, is going to be a additive charcoal drawing. So let's break that down a little bit. Charcoal, mentioned this before, it's just a blackened piece of wood, a little bit different than cooking charcoal, creates more line. There are two kinds of charcoal drawing. There's what's known as subtractive and additive. Subtractive basically refers to the process of adding charcoal first and then utilizing an eraser to erase the light parts of a shape that you're trying to create in this charcoal. And then additive is the other way around. Basically, you're just utilizing charcoal to add lines onto the page, add shading in. It's a really great material for doing dimensional drawing, which is what we're going to be doing with this project, because it is very soft and it's very blendable. So you can really get some darks and some very light lights, blending it out, erasing in the lights. And yeah, it's great for this project, which is going to be basically either jumping straight into your object again, or maybe reapproaching the contour drawing you just did. We're going to go in with the charcoal and start to add some shading or start to build the item out of charcoal. So you might go about this doing a bit of a light sketch with the charcoal, because it can be used similar to a pencil, and then going in and adding darker colors to it after. Or you might choose to approach it by going straight in and trying to utilize different sides of the charcoal to create darker areas and lighter areas in one stroke. It's really just something that warrants a lot of playing with. I'll do a little demo and show some different strokes, as you'll see. And yeah, so the goal now is just to, once again, recreate this object, this time focusing more on form and less on actual technical detail to it. So if your form is full of circles, try to get more rounds in and more light shading that kind of creates more bulbous forms. If your form has more square edges to it, you want to get more harsh darks on one side and lighter darks on another side. There's really like a variety of techniques that can be used to create this illusion, but the goal is just to really have fun and kind of get well acquainted with the material. So let's go into doing a additive charcoal drawing. As I mentioned, there's two kinds of charcoal drawings. There's additive and subtractive. You go over it really quickly because both can kind of be utilized in doing this. Subtractive is when you put down your dark first, and then you utilize your eraser to erase in lines. Ooh. Whereas additive is more just, of course, adding lines. And this can be a great medium to use to create dimension. So like I said, charcoal is very blendy. As you can see, I brushed it. Something you definitely want to keep in mind as you're working with charcoal is not to brush your page. You want to try to only intentionally blend it, just because it's going to be very blendy. So I'm going to again approach the skull. He's a little bit complicated. If this is your first time working with charcoal, you might want to pick a object that's a little bit simpler. I recommend round shapes, fruit, vases, balls if you just got like baseball or something around. They're just really great to get the first starting strokes with charcoal down for. So I like to work with charcoal, working similar to how I did with the contour drawing, where I'll kind of create a little outline of my shape first. But you can also get into it using the charcoal a little bit more to create darks and lights as you draw. So that would be kind of an example of doing that. with this technique, because charcoal is so blendy and easy to erase, you can really lay down a lot of foundational work as you're working with the material. And it's also has a bunch of fun sides. So like drawing with tip, you get some nice solid lines. Drawing with more of the side, you get a nice thick shaded line pretty easily. So just using it here, kind of roughing out my shapes. That's a big thing with charcoal. It's nice to rough things out before you get into fine detail. For this exercise, I'm just going to do more of a simplified form. I'm really just focusing on creating form with this. So like in the last one, we were focused on boiling down form to a more simple series of shapes. Here we're working on boiling down those lines into just its most basic form. So that's its three-dimensional elements. So I'm focusing more on its three-dimensionality and less on how accurate it is technically to what I'm looking at. So obviously my face has gotten a little silly, but that's okay. I've got my basics and I'm coming in now with my shading. So these are areas where I come in, lay down a bit more of a dark lines, get those caverns, the skull, the skull. And see, you can really tell, like, see that blendability that I'm talking about when you just kind of bring your finger in. You can kind of understand how it would be very devastating if I rubbed my hand across it right now.
But you can see as you're doing it, you're blending it and then you darken it again and build it up.
Exactly.
Blend it and it lightens it, but it smooths it out and then you build it up again.
Exactly. And charcoal, because it has such a dark area, you can really utilize it to kind of carve in the shape. So I always like to do a nice dark outline around my object and kind of help emphasize its presence in a space. And it also helps with establishing dark areas. So like in here, it's a dark cavern. In here, it's more of a dark cavern. So it kind of gives you a good baseline for what the darkest part should be. Realistically, the darkest part should not be anywhere on your form, unless of course you're drawing something that is very dark. Or is in very high shadow. So if you have your object positioned in front of the window, for example, it might be very sunstruck on one side and then not at all sunstruck on another side, and that will be an intense shadow. So you might get some of that like darks, but again, just having that baseline. I'm just cutting this, and actually I could do this faster if I use the side of this. Again, utilizing some of its more unique properties to color it in. And yeah. Again, going back, attempting the shades, so building it up, blending it out, putting it down, blending it out. And it's just basically a big repetitive process of adding more and more layers to it as you go. And you can really get highly detailed with something like this, or you, like I said, you can keep it very simple. For the purpose of this one, I'm gonna try to wrap this up. Yeah, this is something you can also, like, you can use contour drawing and charcoal drawing together. Like, you can lay down a basic idea of a shape utilizing just like a contour line, and then you can hit it with charcoal. So starting with your pencil, you can draw your form, and then you can come back and add more of it with, or more of the shaded parts with charcoal. So I think I'll call it there. My chin's going weird. So yeah. yeah, that's a additive charcoal drawing. All right. And finally, we're gonna end this with a fun little activity that you can either do by yourself or you can do with another person. I recommend trying to do it with someone else. It gets really fun when you don't really know what the outcome is going to be. And this exercise is called Exquisite Corpse. It's kind of a silly name. It comes out of the data art movement, is a fun fact, but basically it refers to just a game that aims to build a silly looking character. So if you've got the kit, if you're part of the cookhouse, then you have a piece of 11 by 17 paper that's already tri-folded with the numbers 1, 2, and 3 on it. If you aren't, you can easily just recreate this. Just take a piece of paper, fold it in 3, and number it 1, 2, 3. And then each of these sections is going to become a different chunk of this character you're creating. So the number 1 is going to be your head. Number 2 is going to be your character's torso. And number 3 is going to be your character's legs. The main goal, or the main thing you're trying to remember when doing this, especially if you're doing it with another person, is that you want to draw your face. Say first chunk, draw your face. And you want to leave a neck, and you want to leave the connection points to that neck onto the next page so that the next person drawing doesn't have to see what's being done on the other page. Like I said, keeping it a mystery and keeping it anonymous is really some of the most fun about this game, because then you get really random cool characters out of it. So you'll leave your lines, the next person will take the next chunk and draw the next chunk, and it'll carry on through there. And it kind of ends up looking something like this. So in this example, we have number 1, this head, this kind of cursed pig demon thing looking out to the side. It's got its neck leading off the page. So then the next chunk could come in and draw this beautiful and exquisite pot-belly tentacle man with a pair of pants on. And then it carries on to be these set of dancing legs with flapper feet and a little accessory buddy. You can really go wild with adding little details to him. It just adds to the majesty. And then obviously when you unfold it all, you get this funky, absolutely ridiculous character, which is, 1,000% of the fun of this game. And you get this cool starting board. If you want to go in and add color to it, you totally can. You can start adding shading to it if you want to really build on it. It's just a really great game, for one. And then also, if you're just looking for something to draw and you're not really sure what, it's a great starting point to just draw something random, draw something that's silly, and get some practice in while you're at it. So, yeah.
Who can you play the game with?
You can play the game with friends, family, loved ones, hated people, anybody really. Just pull someone in off the elevator and tell them you're gonna play Exquisite Corpse. I'll often play with my partner and my roommates, and it gets to be really silly fun. So, anybody you can. Right, and that's all I have for small activities today. I hope you enjoyed these projects and you might get some use out of the warm-up techniques, might have some fun with Exquisite Corpse, and I don't know, apply these techniques to other drawing ventures you might want to undertake. Drawing is the basis of a lot of different art forms, so keeping your sketching skills up to snuff is always a great idea if you want to keep up with doing art, and you absolutely should. And I encourage you to continue doing more of these fun little projects, either through KHEP or on your own. And yeah, this has been Eva Sacchetti with awkward drawing illustration lessons. That's all. That's what I got for you.
And there we go. Thank you very much to Eva for sharing her joy of art. her joy of sketching and all the talent that she has. Hopefully that helped you kind of explore maybe some stuff that you'd never done before, and just kind of get your brain working, how the eye and the hand connect, and looking and transferring that to a two-dimensional thing as you draw. It's a tough thing to do, and I think she explained it very well. So thank you very much to her for doing that and joining us on that little art journey. Thank you to Hannah and everyone at the Cookhouse for having us be a part of your world. It's always a fun time to be there. Thank you to the residents who are always so welcoming and super fun to work with. We will see you again soon. To anybody else in YouTube land that's just enjoying these videos, thank you very much for dropping in and enjoying our art and enjoying our love of art. Feel free to make a comment, little like, you know the game, you know how it works. Join us again next month when we're doing something else. I'm not even sure what we're doing, but it'll be fun no matter what. Thanks. Cheerio. Rice Krispies, Frosted Flakes.